The Life of Death by Nightmare Darkness, read by Deathlight. Chapter 2, The Gift of Life. The hospital ward was quiet. I looked outside the window and placed this hospital to be in Canterlot. I felt my robe give me pressure against my back, pressing gently in the direction of the young filly named Featherbright. I wanted to run away, but my rope kept pushing me forward, a phantom force driving me onward. As it passed overhead, I looked up at the arch, a vibrant rainbow of balloons decorating the sign reading Children's Ward. I felt sick. My hoofsteps were silent. Instinctively, I stopped in front of a door, and with hesitance, I stepped through, the hem of my robe trailing behind me. Unlike the old pony's room I was in last, this one was filled with get-well cards, wishes of good luck, stuffed animals, and day-old flowers. In the center of it all, there in her hospital bed, laid Featherbright, with no pony around. I walked up to the end of the bed and began to lift my scythe, just wanting it to be over. "Mom?" a small voice squeaked. I froze as the little filly rolled over and looked at me with her hazel eyes. My scythe lowered as the young filly stared up at me, her ears flattened against her bald head, as her wings tucked in against her sides. My hind legs gave out as I began to weep.
How could I end the life of a child?
"I didn't make it, did I?" came a small voice shattering the silence. I looked up to see that she had made her way to the end of the bed, and was looking down at me with her sad eyes. My voice caught in my throat as I could only shake my head. She smiled sadly, catching me off guard. "Don't be sad," she chuckled, finding me strength. I stood up as the filly went back to her bed. She patted the bed, offering me a place to sit. I obliged as I wiped my tears away. "I thought Death was a hard, scary pony, but you seem caring," she said, placing a hoof on my forehoof. "I'm not very good at it yet," I explained meekly. She laughed and put her hooves over her mouth and smiled. "It's nice to know Death is nice." She smiled at me. I couldn't help but smile back. Her energy was infectious.
I don't want to reap you. It seems unfair.
I found myself saying. Featherbright's smile faltered, and she looked down solemnly. "My mommy said life is like a circle." As she spoke, she drew in the air with her hooves. "We are born, we grow up, we get old, and then we die," she said suddenly, looking haggard and tired. "I've been in and out of this hospital since I was 9. I've had needles and tubes put inside of me, and I've spent more than a few birthdays here." She paused. "But my mom and dad never gave up on me, so I don't give up either. What do you think life is about, and why did I get this illness?" she asked, looking up into my eyes, searching for an answer. I didn't have one. Hell, I didn't even think Celestia had one. But the filly was going to die, and wanted answers that I couldn't give.
Feather, I don't know why you got cancer, but what I do know is that you have influenced the lives around you.
My mind flashing back to foreign memories.
Your little brother, always looking up to you, and your friends whom you spent time with writing music and helping them gain their cutie marks. Feather, life is not about a beginning or an end. It's about the journey you take to get there. Your journey, however short your life has been,
I placed a hoof on her shoulder.
has reverberated in the world, touching hundreds of ponies.
I don't know where I was coming up with this. I felt like my heart was able to flow freely, conveying what I wanted to say. "What is reverberation?" she began to ask. I chuckled and smiled.
Reverberated. It means to affect a lot of ponies with your smile, your struggle, your constant fight.
I explained. "Too bad I lost it," she said, and the room became quiet again. "Does it hurt to die?" she asked after another moment of silence. I flinched, but looking at her I shook my head, hoping it to be true. "I'll miss Mom, Dad, and of course my little brother," she said, smiling sadly, looking up at me, tears filling her eyes, as she gave me a crooked smile. All the strength she seemed to have a moment ago was gone, and her body seemed to be too heavy for her. "Can I ask a favor?" she asked. I felt uncomfortable, but nodded. "Can you write down what I'm about to say so my family can read it?" I nodded. I could do that.
Sure thing.
I said. Hopping down from my seat after I finished writing the farewell letter, I positioned myself at the foot of her bed, lifting my scythe over her. My tears began to flow again, making everything blurry. The scythe moved to touch her forehead, and her body seemed to get heavier as the last air of breath escaped her lungs. The heart monitor flatlined, and soon a nurse bursted into the room, soon calling down the hall for help. The spirit of Featherbright landed beside me with a sad smile. Her bald head now had a beautiful mane full of curls. "I feel a lot better. Thank you. It doesn't hurt. Thank you, Death," she said. My heart swelled as water leaked from my eyes. I was in a storm of emotion, easily being swept up into it. The light began to brighten the room, and both of us looked at it. "Grandma?" Featherbright said, as the chaos of the room became numb to her. Doctors and nurses rushed about, trying to resuscitate her. Feather trotted slowly into the light, embracing her grandmother. And soon the light receded, leaving me with a room full of doctors and nurses. Soon after, 2 other ponies bursted into the room.
Featherbride's parents.
Her mom took one look at Feather's body and collapsed, tears welling up in her eyes. Her father held her to his chest as he openly sobbed. It was then I realized that death is sad, but is also to be celebrated. The dead do not have to worry about the pain or suffering. They are free of it, and it is the living who are in constant pain. I felt bad for them. The activity room had blown the letter under the bed where it could not be seen. I panicked, but only for a minute, as I reached under the bed with my scythe, catching the edge of the page and sliding it to where the mother could see it. She blinked once and leaned forward to pick it up. She took a breath and began to read aloud, making every pony in the room stop. Dear Mom, Dad, little brother, and everyone. I'm sorry that I have to tell you this, but I'm not going to make it. But as you are reading this, I've already moved on. Don't be sad, for I found I lived a wonderful life. Mom, I love the blueberry muffins you always made after the treatments. Dad, I loved when you took me out to the parks on my good days. I'll miss getting into fights with my little brother, but most of all, I'll miss your support. When you tell my friends, tell them to celebrate my life as I hope they all will. I'm sorry that I didn't look out, but if anything death has told me is true, that is life, in my case, even though short, has impacted my friends and family in the greatest of ways. Love and friendship is what I gave, and what I got is love and friendship in return. I love you all, and I hope you can all live your lives to the fullest. She finished reading, and she hugged the paper forcefully, tears flowing down freely from her cheeks. I turned around and lifted my key, inserting it into the lock and putting the whole scene behind me. I walked into the office where Apple Scroll stood there waiting. She looked at me with a soft smile. You did well, she said as she gave me a hug. The hold of my scythe let go as I sobbed into her shoulder, hugging back. It's not easy, but at least you have a heart, Grapevine. She muttered comfortably into my comb. I looked at her and smiled. You too. Thank you. Apple Scroll patted me on the shoulder. Lifting out a scroll, I took the next name burned into the paper. Barry Green, 34, electric chair, I read, looking up at her. Never rest for the dead, she chuckled. I smiled meekly. Oh, forgetful me. She went behind the desk and pulled out a book labeled, How to Be Death for Dummies. Thanks, I said, taking the book and putting it into my robe as I walked to the door and lifting the key. Opening the door, I walked into a room with several ponies looking through a glass at a Barry Green. He was strapped into place with a metal connector on his head. From the frying pan into the fire, I said to myself. I know this is one a bit dark around Christmas, but it's not too dark, I think. I mean, it's the life of death. What do you expect? And I'm going to be putting one more chapter out next week. Same thing with My Roommate's a Vampire. Then I'll switch over to my Christmas stuff. And then it'll be back over to the normal stuff. Maybe I'll do some New Year's. I'm not sure yet, but I'll figure it out soon. So, yeah, see y'all in the next one.